All right, today we're cracking open something really big. Maybe one of the most exciting and honestly challenging frontiers in tech right now, AI agents.
We've all gotten pretty used to chatbots, right? They can answer our questions, maybe draft an email for us. But what if that AI could do more than just talk? What if it could actually act? I mean, imagine an AI that doesn't just plan your vacation, but actually goes ahead and books the flights, reserves the hotel, and lines up a car for you, all by itself. That's the huge leap we're talking about here. So, what is an AI agent really? Well, you can think of it as an AI that can do three main things. First, it perceives its environment. Basically, it takes in information. Then it makes decisions based on what it sees. And finally, and this is the game changer, it takes action on its own to get to a goal you've set. It's really the difference between having a co-pilot who gives you suggestions and having a full-on pilot who's actually flying the plane. But that autonomy, that's where the big challenge comes in. See, when an AI can act all on its own, figuring out how or why it made a certain choice can be, well, almost impossible. Its whole decision-making process can turn into what we call a black box. We can see what goes in and we can see what comes out, but everything that happens in the middle, it can be a total mystery. And let's be real, when you're talking about actions with real-world consequences, that kind of mystery is a huge problem. This really gets at the fundamental shift here. Think about it. A traditional AI, like the chatbots we use every day, is totally reactive. It just sits there and waits for you to give it a prompt, and then it responds. But an agentic AI, it's proactive. You give it a big picture goal, and it just goes, working on its own step by step to make it happen. It has its own initiative. Okay, so if these agents are operating inside this black box, how in the world do we make sure they're doing what we want them to do? More importantly, how do we ever trust them? Well, that's exactly what this next part is about. Let's talk about the tools that let us peek inside that box.
Now, there are two really important ideas to get here. The first one is called monitoring. The best way to think about this is like the check engine light in your car. It's programmed to look for problems we already know could pop up, specific errors, known failures. But then you have observability. This is a whole other level. Observability is the power to dig into the stuff we didn't see coming. It lets us ask brand new questions right then and there to figure out why an agent is doing something weird or unexpected, and that difference is just so crucial. Monitoring is all about the known unknowns, the problems we anticipate and know to look for. Its whole goal is just to spot failures. It answers the simple question, is it broken? But observability? That's for the unknown unknowns, the stuff that takes us completely by surprise. Its goal isn't just to spot a problem, but to understand the behavior. It asks a much, much deeper question. Wait, why is it doing that?
All right, so we've got the flashlights to peek inside the box. We can see what's going on. But what are we actually looking for once we're in there? Because, understanding an AI agent isn't just about the tech. It cracks open this whole Pandora's box of really critical ethical questions that we absolutely have to face. And this is where we start to see the real ghosts in the machine, the hidden biases, the unseen risks that can really haunt an autonomous system. So let's break down the three biggest ethical challenges here.
First up, and it's a big one you've probably heard about, is bias. Here's the hard truth. An AI is only ever as good as the data we feed it. And if that data is full of our own historical and societal biases, well, the AI agent doesn't just learn them, it inherits them. And worse, it can act on them, automatically and at a massive scale. And the consequences in the real world? They're incredibly serious. Think about an AI agent hired to screen resumes. It could easily learn to prefer candidates from one background over another and just toss out more qualified people without a second thought. Or an agent deciding on loans. It might discriminate against entire neighborhoods based on zip codes. Even something that seems harmless, like a content agent, could trap a user in an extreme filter bubble, all because of biases that were baked right into its programming.
Which brings us, naturally, to our second major challenge, transparency. It's simple, really. If an agent messes up, or if it shows some kind of bias, we have to be able to look under the hood and understand why. If we can't do that, that black box just stays sealed shut.
And here's the bottom line. Without transparency, there's no accountability. It's just impossible. Imagine an autonomous agent making a huge mistake in medicine or finance or even law enforcement. Oops, we don't know why it did that, just isn't going to cut it, not even close. We absolutely have to be able to trace its logic, to see its steps, so we can learn from what went wrong and figure out who's responsible.
And all of this leads to the final, and you could argue the most important ethical pillar of all, control. As these agents get more and more powerful and autonomous, the big question becomes, how do we make sure that a human being always has the final say?
Right now, there are basically two main models for how we do this. The first is called human in the loop. This is the super cautious approach. The agent does all the prep work, but it has to stop and ask a human for a go or no-go before it takes any big action. Then there's human on the loop. In this model, the agent is free to act on its own, but there's a human watching over its shoulder, ready to jump in and hit the brakes or change course at any moment. And deciding which of these models to use, well, that's one of the most critical decisions you can make.
So there you have it. Those are the three big things we have to get right: bias, transparency, and control.
And that really leaves us with one last massive question to chew on. As these AI agents become a bigger and bigger part of our lives, as our assistants, our coworkers, maybe even our companions, when one of them goes wrong, who's ultimately on the hook? Is it you, the person who used it, the developer who wrote the code, the company that put it out there? Figuring out who is ultimately responsible, that is the great challenge waiting for us just around the corner.